Imagine a librarian, deep in the bowels of an ancient library, poring over a dictionary's weathered pages. They open to the entry for definition and read the explanation of the meaning of a word or phrase. Curious, they seek word and find a single unit of meaning in language. Then meaning, the significance or importance of something. And significance, the quality of meaning something. The cycle loops, a hall of mirrors reflecting nothing but itself. The librarian's brow furrows. What defines the dictionary itself? This is the paradox of self-reference, a riddle that haunts language, logic, and even the foundations of knowledge. It asks, how can a system define its existence without relying on something outside itself? The paradox is not just about dictionaries. It is a mirror held to the fragility of meaning itself. The paradox is unsettling because it reveals that even the most rigorous systems, mathematics, law, language, are built on sand. They cannot anchor themselves. They must float, like an Ouroboros swallowing its own tail. The question gnaws. If everything is defined by something else, where does the chain begin? Explanation of the concept. The paradox of self-reference arises when a system's definitions rely on its own components, creating a circular foundation. For example, dictionaries. Words are defined using other words, but the dictionary itself cannot define dictionary without invoking the concept of a book of definitions. Legal systems. Laws define terms like justice or rights, yet these terms depend on cultural or philosophical assumptions outside the legal text. Mathematics. Axiomatic systems, e.g., Euclid's geometry, rely on unproven assumptions. Gödel's incompleteness theorems, segment 12, showed that no system can prove its consistency. The paradox is rooted in circularity and dependence on external axioms. A self-referential system cannot bootstrap itself into existence. It requires an outside framework to ground its definitions. This is the essence of bootstrap paradoxes, segment 2, a ship built from its planks or a universe created by its wormholes. Philosophers and logicians have long grappled with this issue. Russell's paradox, segment 14, exposed self-reference dangers in set theory. Gödel's theorems, segment 12, revealed that mathematics cannot be both complete and consistent. Linguistic recursion. Language requires a metalanguage to define its terms. The paradox is not a flaw, but a feature of all symbolic systems. To define definition, one must step outside the system, a meta-level that itself relies on unproven assumptions. Exploration of implications. The paradox of self-reference is more than a linguistic puzzle. It is a fissure in the edifice of human knowledge. 1. The fragility of definitions. All systems depend on foundational terms that cannot be defined internally. A dictionary cannot explain meaning without assuming the reader understands significance. A legal code cannot define justice without invoking moral principles beyond its pages. This fragility suggests that knowledge is a house of cards, held together by shared assumptions rather than absolute truths. 2. The limits of science. Science, too, is a self-referential system. Physics relies on axioms like the conservation of energy or the laws of motion. These are not proven within physics, but are assumed true based on observation and consensus. If a theory like quantum mechanics, segment 6, or the many worlds interpretation, segment 18, depends on unprovable premises, does science itself rest on a paradox? 3. The illusion of certainty. The paradox challenges Enlightenment-era faith in reason. We assume systems can be logically self-contained, but self-reference shows that all knowledge is built on faith. Faith in axioms, faith in definitions, faith in the observer's perspective. This aligns with the simulation hypothesis, segment 5, where reality might be a programmed construct with undefined rules. 4. Ethics and morality. Ethical systems face the same dilemma. A code of ethics might state, act to maximize well-being, but well-being is undefined. To ground it, one must appeal to external values, a leap beyond the system. This creates a paradox. Moral systems cannot be fully self-contained, yet they demand universal principles. 5. The role of context. Meaning emerges from context, not pure logic. A word's definition depends on usage, culture, and the reader's background. The paradox reveals that systems are not objective but relational, tools shaped by the minds that use them. This mirrors the Sorites paradox, segment 11, where boundaries like heap rely on context, not absolutes. 6. The comfort of axioms. The paradox offers a strange reassurance. Perfection is not required. Just as a dictionary functions despite circularity, knowledge can thrive with pragmatic assumptions. Scientists accept axioms like the universe is ordered without proof, building models that work enough to advance understanding. 7. The illusion of progress. The paradox questions humanity's quest for absolute truth. If every system relies on unproven foundations, are we chasing an unreachable horizon? Or is knowledge a collaborative tapestry, woven with threads of assumption and adaptation? 8. The ethical dilemma of foundations. Who decides the axioms? A legal system's foundational assumptions, e.g., human rights, are shaped by culture, history, and power. The paradox reveals that no system is neutral. It is built on choices, biases, and exclusion. 9. The paradox of consciousness. Consciousness itself is self-referential. The mind defines self using thoughts, which are defined by the self. This loop, like the liar paradox, segment 12, suggests that subjective experience cannot be fully explained without invoking the very thing it seeks to define. 10. The cosmic scale of foundations. The paradox mirrors the universe's nature. Physics seeks to describe reality with equations, but these equations depend on assumptions about space, time, and causality. Are these assumptions just convenient fictions, or do they touch on deeper truths? Transition to the next segment. The paradox of self-reference asks, can a system define itself without contradiction? The paradox of the unknowable asks, can a truth exist beyond all systems? Imagine a question so fundamental it cannot be framed within any language, logic, or theory. This is the paradox of the unknowable, the idea that some truths are inherently beyond human grasp. Both paradoxes share a common thread: foundational limits. The dictionary's circularity and the unknowable silence both whisper that reality's bedrock is inaccessible. The self-referential system's fragility and the unknowable's mystery remind us that existence is a labyrinth where maps are drawn on the walls, not the floor. The paradox of self-reference says, you can't define the rules without stepping outside them. The unknowable says, some truths have no rules at all. Together, they frame reality as a puzzle with missing pieces, a dance between what we can name and what we must leave to the dark. As we turn to the paradox of the unknowable, we shift from the fragility of systems to the void beyond them. The dictionary's circular definitions and the unknowable silence both ask, what lies outside the map? Expanded exploration of the paradox of self-reference. The anatomy of definitions. Language is a web of interdependence. The word chair is defined by its function, material, and form, but each of these terms requires further definitions. A chair is not a chair without a concept of sitting, which depends on gravity, which depends on mass, and so on. The chain never ends, it loops back to unproven assumptions. This mirrors mathematics. Euclid's geometry rests on axioms like, a straight line can be drawn between any 2 points. These axioms are not proven, they are accepted as true. If challenged, their defenders might cite intuition or utility, but never a proof within the system. The illusion of objectivity. The paradox reveals that objectivity is an illusion. A legal system's justice is defined by its culture's values, not universal truths. A scientific theory's truth is validated by observation and consensus, not by standing outside the universe to measure it. This ties to the simulation hypothesis. Segment 5. If reality is a simulation, its rules are programmed by an external designer. If not, we are still trapped in a self-referential loop, defining everything in terms of itself. The comfort of pragmatism. The paradox does not render knowledge useless, it reveals its human roots. A dictionary functions because readers share cultural assumptions. Science progresses by accepting provisional axioms. The fragility of self-reference is balanced by the resilience of collective agreement. The ethical dilemma of foundations. Who chooses the axioms? A legal system's foundational principles, e.g., human rights, are shaped by power dynamics. Colonialism, for instance, relied on self-referential systems that defined civilization in ways that excluded indigenous peoples. The paradox reminds us that systems are political as well as logical. The illusion of progress. The paradox questions whether humanity's quest for knowledge is asymptotic, approaching truth but never touching it. Every answer spawns new questions, and every system requires external grounding. This mirrors the Sorites paradox. Segment 11. Adding one grain to a heap changes it, but the heap's essence remains undefined. The role of consciousness. Consciousness is the ultimate self-referential system. The mind defines self using thoughts, which are defined by the self. This loop, like the liar paradox, segment 12, suggests that subjective experience cannot be fully analyzed from within. The cosmic scale of limits. The paradox echoes the halting problem. Segment 14, just as a program cannot analyze itself fully, a system cannot define itself without external input. The universe's laws may be similarly constrained, grounded in axioms we can never fully examine. The comfort of mystery. The paradox offers humility. If systems must rely on unproven foundations, perhaps the search for absolute truth is a noble but futile quest. The unknowable, segment 20, awaits beyond the map, a reminder that mystery is not a flaw but a feature of existence. Transition to the final segment. The paradox of self-reference asks, can a system ground itself in its own rules? The paradox of the unknowable asks, can a truth exist beyond all systems? Imagine a question so fundamental, it cannot be framed in any language or logic. This is the paradox of the unknowable, the idea that some truths are beyond human comprehension. Both paradoxes deal with boundaries, one about systems' fragility, the other about reality's infinity. The dictionary's circularity and the unknowable's silence both whisper that existence is a story we tell ourselves, with margins we cannot fill. The self-referential system's limits and the unknowable's mystery lead to the same question: what is real? The next segment will explore the void beyond all answers, the paradox that all paradoxes point to. This expansion weaves the paradox of self-reference into a meditation on knowledge, ethics, and the human condition. It avoids bullet points by using narrative and philosophical exploration, maintaining the reflective tone. The transition bridges seamlessly to the paradox of the unknowable by contrasting systems' fragility with reality's ultimate mystery.